Morning. We'll call the meeting to order for the day. First item on our agenda is approval of today's agenda.
Move approval.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to be heard. Any citizens that would like to be heard on any issue that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we have some employee recognitions. First one is Diane Anderson. Morning, Diane.
Hi, Mark.
This is presented to you in grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens.
Thank you.
very much.
Michelle.
I saw you from the passionate.
Chief Deputy Treasurer, 15 years. Morning. This is presented to you in grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you very much. Paul Warner, Social Services Supervisor. Good morning. Holly, this is presented to you in grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you very much. Kathleen Ornis, social worker, 35 years. This is presented to you in grateful recognition of 35 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you very much. Okay. Approval of the minutes of the September 15th and 22nd of September meetings.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approve payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, the first item on our agenda for today is the Moorhead School District Board Bond Referendum Election Information. Lynn Kovash and Brandon Lunick, come on up.
Missy's here too.
Hmm?
Missy Lights, Missy's here.
Oh, Missy, come on up, Missy. Yeah, sorry. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us at the meeting. I always tell people I'm here to talk about my favorite topic, Moorhead schools. So we will get started.
Lynn, talk into the microphone.
Yeah, that's right. That green light. We are here, and our theme this year is honoring the past and shaping the future. And we've spent some time looking at our past and talking about what has happened in the past in our district, but also looking at our future for our students and our future for our community. Now, let's see if I can. Okay. It was about 2 years ago that we started a process. It was a citizens engagement process, and it was a task force that met. There was a steering committee. They went out and selected more members, and those members actually went out and talked in the community about what do we want for schools in Moorhead, and what do we want for our students? What kind of an education do we want for our students? From that came a real emphasis on 21st century skills, and 21st century skills are those skills that students need to be successful in the workforce: collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving. We want that for our students. We also want good facilities. We also want safe, secure facilities. So from that, we made our strategic plan, as many organizations do, and facilities was one. So we formed a master facility task force last year to look at our facilities. That was a group of citizens that talked about what kind of facilities do we need in Moorhead. From that came this facility vision statement that you see. Safe, inviting, and inclusive learning environments. 21st century learning, as I talked about, we want schools that support that, and we want meaningful and collaborative community partnerships in our school district. So this is our opening enrollment from 1960 to 2025. So the darker orange are those projections. From the 1950s to the 1970s, there was a lot of growth in Moorhead School District. We built many schools. That was when we built Moorhead High School, was built in 1967. We built North and South Junior High. We built Thomas Edison. Some of those were all built in the 50s. It was just a great boom. And that real spike you see in enrollment, I've been told in the 70s, was the kindergarten. Kindergarten was added. We were holding kindergarten actually in churches in many different places throughout the community back in the early 70s. Those were the largest classes, about 7,000. And I graduated in that time period, I'll just say. And then I was always told our class was one of the larger ones at 536, but now I was talking to Ron Gadberry, and he said that one of his sons graduated in a class of 600. So we know that probably the largest class size in Moorhead has been 600. Then we had a sharp decline, and we had to close schools. We closed North and South Junior High. We closed Sharp, Park, Lincoln School, actually. We closed quite a few different schools. So then we went to this dip, and that was the baby boom and the bust of the baby boom. And then back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, we were showing growth again. That's when Robert Asp, just across the street, opened as a 5-6 school. We had a small school called Voyager for 5-6, and South Junior High became, we closed Central, but we had South Junior High. So then we opened schools, and then back in about 2000, 2001, we started to see this decline in student population again. And that's where the superintendent at the time and the administration, and I was assistant superintendent, said, we're going to go out and look at our community, see what they want. And it came back to build new schools, close some schools, remodel schools, and we had declining enrollment. And that was a vision that really, I believe, helped spur some growth in our community. So in 2002, March 12th, 2002, we had a bond referendum for $64 million to completely redo our whole district. We built a new elementary, we built a new middle school, and we completely remodeled elementary schools. And that really stood for a time, and now we're So last year, we expected about 120 new students. We actually ended up with about 340 new students. And our kindergarten class is at 576. And I remember back in the 2000s, we were hoping if we could get to 400, 425 and stabilize at that, that would be perfect. And so we are now above 500. We third, second, first grade are all above 500. They're about 505, 513, and then we go to this 576. So the growth is real, and the growth is here. So that just gives you a little bit of background of where we've been with buildings in our school district. And I'll let Missy take over.
So we had our task force first semester of last school year, and with the task force, we talked about some of the priorities if we are going to go for a bond for building, and one of the high priorities was secure entrances at all of our sites. And one of the things with secure entrances, we realized that our buildings weren't built with today's standards for those entrances. And we wanted an entry where parents could be inside but be greeted by an adult before they are going into the building. And so there'd be, in a sense, a vestibule where you could wait, but you'd have a way to check in before you'd enter. At Robert Asp and Ellen Hopkins, that would require a small addition to allow that. And so that you could have a secretary that would greet them right away, allow them to either call the student down or check them into the building. The other piece there is that we want it to look like a front entry. A lot of people ask on Robert Asp and Ellen Hopkins, where is the front entry? They think it's the west side because it looks like it has a nice hangover, but it's really on the south side. When we look at Horizon and SGR, which were more or newer, they had space that we can remodel to allow that to happen, so that we can still have that same type of entry for people to enter, be welcomed into our buildings. The high school is probably our most difficult building to look at that, and part of it's the age of our students, but we have 3 entries that we really have to look at. We have the front side of the building, which is the south side, but there's no parking there, so most of our students enter from the north side. And then we also are connected to the sports center. And so we are looking at what to do to upgrade security at the high school, but it also might involve having people at those entries as we look forward and going with that. The second piece is that additional classroom space, and I think that's where the numbers we need to look at. We've added 27 classrooms since 2009. And we've done that with a small addition at Probstfield of 8 classrooms, and also by limiting our early childhood programming. And that did mean that we had to reconfigure grades by putting all kindergartners at Probstfield Center. And that's how we've been able to handle the growth that we've had going forward. The other piece that happened is we have all-day kindergarten. So we used to have 9 classrooms for kindergarten that held 18 sections. We are at 24 full-day sections today. We graduated about 380 students last spring, and we have now a group of 576 coming in. So it kind of shows some of the change that we're seeing. We don't just grow at kindergarten. We're growing across at all buildings as we look at that. So that's where we are feeling that space crunch, and we reconfigured spaces almost at every site into classrooms to make sure that we can handle that. One of the pieces that we feel is very important is that one media center is really not enough for flexible space for students to use when we have buildings the size that we do, and we want to restore what is called our learning spaces in equitable amounts so that each grade level would have access to a larger space for doing different types of work. And we talk about the kind of learners and employees that we want. We want to make sure that we are promoting those critical thinking experiences, collaboration, as they go forward. We also want age-appropriate learning, and that is with the bond, we'd be able to move back to K4 grade configuration. Right now, we're doing what we need to do to have all of our children have adequate space, but we do feel like it's a better, with the task force, grade combination of having our kindergartners through 4th grade. Some of that's modeling, some of that's riding the bus with your older sibling, and some of those pieces. Then we'd have the 5-6 building, which would be connected to Horizon, the 7-8. And one of the pieces that came out of the task force also was a more gradual move into the middle school. And so it'd be a more elementary-based model, and then 7-8, and then they'd move to the 9-12. One of the pieces that we have to look at is Minnesota is very supportive of early childhood, and it is a great place to make sure we can fill some gaps for students that have some academic needs. We are very limited in space. With the bond, it will allow us to turn Probstfield back into an early childhood center, and it is already designed for that age learner, so there's no remodeling that would be necessary. And the last point is a performing arts space that would be on site for the Horizon campus. Our community has been very supportive of the arts. In fact, we have a waiting list for our own school sites to get into the high school to use the auditorium. We think we would use that still 24/7 with using community ed if we have other time available.
Just to let you know that we have a few more slides in your handout than we'll be showing here. All of the building designs, and we won't go through all of those. So I'll let Brandon take over.
With this bond, there's 2 parts to it. There's the new construction side of things, and then there's the remodel and the reconstruction that Missy was talking about in terms of the flexible learning environment. So here on this slide, you'll see that the Horizon 5-6 school with the auditorium and the security upgrades is $44 million roughly, and the new K4 elementary is roughly $25.5 million. And this slide that we have here, we just wanted to show you where the location of the new elementary school is going to go. If you're familiar with 24th Avenue South, you have the roundabout, And then if you go beyond that, there's kind of a string of houses, and then it's just an open field. It's just on the east side of those last developed property over in Horizon Shores. This site was selected in conjunction with the City of Moorhead. The City of Moorhead worked with us. We had 6 sites that we had to choose from, and the interesting part is I'm sure you could pick up a rock and throw it. Is 40 acres of land that the school district already owns, but what we found running into trying to utilize the land that we already own was that it wasn't ready for infrastructure out there. So working with the city, this ended up being the number 2 site, but the number 1 site was to the east on 40th, and we felt with Reinertson already on 40th Avenue that it wouldn't do us a lot of good to put another school on 40th Avenue. So we went with site number 2, and so if you can see where it says the proposed site, if it's clear, that's kind of where, well, that's not kind of, that is where the new site would be. There, and this depiction here is just a real early schematic design. We haven't done any working with the teachers, working with staff to determine what the final look would be. This is a real early schematic look of what the building would look like, incorporating what Missy was talking about earlier with the six section per grade, and each little, you see like a little silver part sticking out there that represents kind of a hub of the class or the pod learning areas, and so there should be 4 of them there, and then the 5th one you kind of can't see. It's over in the middle, and that would be where the kindergarten would be located. So it's a K-4 school built for 750 students, similar to what the other 3 elementaries would be once the remodels and reconfiguration is done. Here, this slide is another early schematic look at what the 5-6 edition would look like. Does this pointer work?
I don't know. I don't have it.
Okay. We'll have to just work with me, and I'll try to describe this the best I can. If want to talk to you a little bit about the commons area, because we get a lot of questions on do the 5th and 6th graders eat separately from the 7th and 8th graders, and the answer is yes. So this whole setup structure here would be to keep the 5th and 6th graders separate as much as possible. You'll see that commons area right there has 2 entrances, one to the north and one to the south. One is for parent drop-off and the other is for bus drop-off, so we can keep that traffic separated and really try to limit traffic as much as possible on 12th Avenue. So the north side, which is where you see the staff lounge and the administrative offices there, that's for parent drop-off. And on the back side, or the south side, you'll see that is where the bus would be dropping off kids. 2 gyms for the to accommodate the 6 sections. Those gyms would be all in line if we ever to make the total 5. You see that the existing gyms are in white there. We felt that was a good design if we ever wanted to host community tournaments or those kind of things. You could really do a lot of nice things there for the purpose. The classroom wings have a lot of flexibility. You can do the whole grade on one floor, or you can do a wing where there's 5th on 2nd and 1st, 6th on 2nd and 1st. That hasn't been determined yet. The library is on the 2nd floor. Again, 6 sections per grade in the learning house. And just talk to you a little bit about the auditorium that Missy talked about. The auditorium is located on the north side of the building. Therefore, we felt it was important to put it there because we felt predominantly that it would more than likely be used mostly by the 7th and 8th grade students. But if we hosted events there at night, it would be easy to seal or close off the other part of the school, so we could push any overflow into the old common or the cafeteria area. Common, what do we call that again?
Oh, it's the
The cafetorium.
yeah.
Okay, so the cafetorium, and that would handle the overflow parking, could be handled on both sides of the building, allowing folks to walk through. You'll see there is where we would do some remodel for the safe and secure entrance just outside the existing entrance right now, as when we open up that area, we'd have to relocate the staff lounge from where it currently is located. Yep. Here's kind of a rendering of what the site could look like. You'll notice that the new addition that you see here has the darker gray roofs. So anything that you see with a darker gray roof is considered new construction, and the lighter gray roofed tops are considered what's there existing. So it's a nice schematic design. You can see the buses on the north side. You can see that we preserve the football field and the track to avoid a lot of site work. And we will be relocating that baseball field, which would be which would have to be moved in the process. So, talking about the renovations and the security upgrades, you can see the total there. Ellen Hopkins, just a little over $2 million. Robert Asp, a little over $2 million. And for saving time in this presentation so we can keep everybody on schedule, those two schools are almost a mirror of each other of what's going on. SGR takes on a little different look. You can see that price tag came in about $2.8 million. Propesfield, about $120,000, and Moorhead High, about $360,000. This slide right here is an example of what the flexible learning area would look like at both Robert Asp and Ellen Hopkins. You know, I think the goal of this area, and Missy and Lynn, you can interject at any time, is to create that learning environment for, you know, science experiments, art projects, anything that maybe can't fit in the traditional classroom and requires setup could be done in this type of a learning environment. And I think one of the big goals out of this is not only to use this learning environment, but to use it effectively, and we talked about the use of furniture and how we're going to incorporate that.
So one of the things that we didn't have an option of back in 2004, when we built the buildings, is to have furniture that was easily movable by a student or a teacher. So if you've ever been in Horizon, I always have to smile because they have very sturdy desks that we purchased. They're in great shape, but we put tennis balls on the bottom of all of the legs of them so teachers can move them and not make a lot of noise, but they're heavy to move. The new furniture is much lighter and very flexible, so we can have a teacher clear space in their own room to make space to do something differently. So it is kind of exciting that we'd be able to have some new furniture, which will take us many years across all of our rooms, but it'll allow teachers a lot more flexibility. They're already doing that, but it just takes a lot more time.
Again, there's a rendering of what Ellen Hopkins and Robert Asp would look like with that main entry reconfiguration to give it that standout look that clearly defines what the main entry would look like. There is the reconfiguration of what the office administrative centers would look like at Ellen Hopkins and Robert Asp. Again, working and emphasizing school safety and forcing people to come in and check in and then letting them go to make that entrance a little more safe and secure. Okay, and this slide is the SGR addition, how that would take on. The only reconfiguration in that office in terms of new construction would be to make space to add that nursing bay, but you can see how we would use the existing space to reconfigure that entry now and make that more safe and secure.
Excuse me, which part of that photo is the existing entry now?
The lighter.
So that
So
on
this
the,
is all existing.
right.
Yep.
Okay, so the far right is what?
Yeah,
is
that would be the
existing?
new construction
Okay.
that we would have to add on
Thank
to
you.
the existing office. Just want to share with you a little story of success. S.G. Reinertsen, when it was built in 2004 on 40th Avenue, that's the picture on the left. And you can see all those open fields there, and just a few years later in the spring of 2015, you can see the growth that has taken off around it. You see Hornbachers in the picture there, and you see a lot more single-family dwellings, and I believe there's a lot more development going on now to the south of Reinertsen, I believe to the tune of about 196 addresses being addressed there or being constructed. Horizon, same story, opened in 2004. Spring of 2015 comparison, you can see the growth that's gone on around it. And there's even another development, I believe Horizon Shores 8th is now moving to the north, and it'll be directly across from Horizon, and then our site would be just to the left of that picture. I want to talk to you about the increase in Moorhead's tax base, and we'll try to keep this quick, but I think this is a real success story here. In 2003, just as the schools were beginning to be constructed, the taxable market value in Moorhead was just under I think it was 1.3 billion roughly, and now in 2014 you can see that's just tipping over 3 billion in taxable market value. So that's a lot of growth, and in that time Moorhead from 2003 to 2014 on the average has experienced 7.5% growth in that taxable market value per year. So I think that's a pretty strong statement of growth and success within the city of Moorhead. I want to talk to you a little bit now about the bond of 2002, comparing it to the bond of 2015, and what growth does on overall to the debt structure. I believe that this is something you guys deal with all the time, so it's fairly easy to explain. But $150,000 home in 2002, when the market value was about that $1.3 billion, was $42 a month, and a $300,000 home was $66 a month. And you can see now with the growth from 2002 to 2015 that growth really impacts the impact on the taxpayer. $9 a month for a $150,000 home, and $20 a month on a $300,000 home.
I just want to comment quickly, because I have been in some meetings with you. That tax calculator at the bottom is important because you do have the impacts to the ag land as well as the commercial land. So it is, because we're televised, it's on moorheadschools.org/referendum.
Very good. And here is the debt structure of how it would look in terms of old debt versus new debt. And the old debt in this graph is in the blue, and the new debt pending a successful November 3rd election is in red. And you can see that there's very little red for the first 5 years of the bond, and that's by design. We would be paying interest only on the new debt until the old debt would go away, so to speak. And why it was done that way was to try to minimize the impact as much as possible when we have existing debt out there from 2002. And so when you look at the blue and the red, that's assuming no growth in the city of Moorhead. So that's a very conservative estimate. But with the growth that Moorhead has been experiencing, I wanted to add a line in there to show you what growth does to the overall debt for the school district. And if you look at that red line, that's estimating for Moorhead 6% growth for the first 5 years of that bond, 1.5% less than what we've been averaging. So again, a very conservative estimate of what the debt structure is, and then 2% a year for the next 2 years after that, and 1% beyond that, because I feel like if I did anything more than that, it's hard to predict what the economy will do the further you get out from today's date. So I wanted to be real conservative when we showed that growth. But look at how the growth and how that impacts the overall debt structure. It goes from where it is today at 20% to be even below 15% by the end of the bond. So I just wanted to show you with the growth in Moorhead, the impact in the solid bar graph is estimated at a 0%, and what happens as growth and things continue to expand. So just wanted to share that with you folks.
So these $9 and $20 figures, That's after the 5-year? It would be less than that during the first 5 years?
No, that's going to be when it first starts, because we're going to add it to the existing debt that's on
So
there.
initially, it would be $9, and then it would go up after the 5?
Nope,
Go down.
nope.
Okay.
In theory, it should go
stay.
down or stay the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is where I think some people might become a little confused. For example, if one owns a $300,000 home, the estimated tax, according to this, would go up $241 next year. Somebody might look down here and say, my, it's only going up $20. And the average person, I don't think, understands what this means. And
Yeah, one is a monthly figure and the other one's an annual figure. So that's where the top chart is an annual and the below chart is monthly.
okay, and that,
So we'll make that clear when we
just
hand those
wanted
out
to
in the future.
throw that off to you. Okay, thank you very much.
Kevin?
So the bond referendum, then, is there, I'm assuming then that there will be a special assessment put on every property. Is that how it's going to work?
Well, you would just add that to,
It's on your property
it would be on
tax.
your property.
Yeah, but it would be under a special assessment?
School district.
School district?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Special
voter-
assessment.
It says voter approved.
Right. So that is based on the current valuation
Correct.
of the
Yep.
school district, correct?
Turns out, yep.
So does that change annually as the
As the property
value?
values change, then our values change, yep.
Okay, so one special assessment changes annually based on the growth of the city.
Correct. And that's what we tried to depict in that earlier.
There are some
graph.
special assessments that don't work that way. They're just flat
Right.
payments
But
for
what happens...
X amount of years.
What happens is it gets spread out over the net tax capacity.
Right.
So as that increases, the bond stays the same.
Right.
And so as that value spreads out, that debt gets spread out amongst more value. So in theory, it should lessen the burden as growth continues.
So it has an opportunity to go from $9 to something less as the city grows.
Correct, correct.
Whereas, again, for the public information, I can give you an example in my home area in Oakport, when we had services brought in. They were brought in under a bond issue as well, but there was a flat rate charged for every
Right.
property, and it didn't change.
And ours isn't brought in on that same,
Okay.
same structure, same
Okay.
item that you were talking about. What happens is, as we experience growth, that debt
Everybody
stays
benefits.
the same, and then that reduces the overall burden.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there are more opportunities if you'd like to hear more. This was our brief. We have a longer one where we go through all of the drawings. But copy with the mayor and superintendent. I do have copy with Delray Williams, and it's an opportunity more for informal to ask questions. State of the district, I've done that once a year, and we talk about the school district. We also talk about test scores, things like that, as well as the referendum. And then the League of Women Voters is also having us do a presentation at the public library. And here's the sample ballot, and I know you can't read it, but I did want to say there is only one item on the ballot. This is the only item on the ballot, except for the city of Dilworth that has the city council election. And then here's polling places. We did change the polling places, so those have all been sent out to people. I think they're getting their mailing today, the required mailing, so that they know where the polling places are. And then this last spring, it actually came from the county. There was an opportunity to do some video, and Moorhead School District did make a video. This is a different video than is on the county website, but I just wanted to share this with you if I can figure out how to get it to work, okay? This is the website we were talking about, and there is a property tax calculator right on there. So that is all right on our website, along with questions and answers and some of the other things. And we'll just share this video with you. Is there sound? Oh, maybe no sound? Well, I guess there's no sound. Sorry. Forgot about the sound.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to go back to my comment. I do want to make sure that I didn't confuse anybody on my comments. In my questions, I was asking if it was similar to a special assessment. Lori informed me and wanted to be sure that we understand that it's part of the school district levy,
Right.
which is different than a special assessment. And that's where it is allowed then to be readjusted annually based on growth. I just wanted to make sure that nobody thinks this is a special assessment. Okay.
Oh, okay.
A century and a half.
Let's see if I can start it over again. I'm sorry. That will work?
Mhm.
Thank you. I'm a Mac user, I just have to say. There we go.
At Moorhead Area Public Schools, we're not the only ones who are putting the accent on excellence. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the decades of support from our community members. Our area's families place a high value on education. It's why we've been able to offer modern facilities, award-winning programs, and talented teachers to our continuously expanding educational community. Our school system is 5,800 students strong, with 600 more students in the last 10 years, and we're still growing.
Moorhead has a rich tradition of supporting both its staff and students with facilities that both inspire and create a culture of excellence.
Moorhead Public Schools have been in existence for over 140 years. And during that nearly century and a half, our citizenry have always stepped forward to meet the needs of our ever-growing student population.
Do you have the vision? Now is the time to help make our students' future the best it can be. Moorhead Area Public Schools. Experience the excellence.
So that's our presentation. Thank you so much. And are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Good presentation. Thank you. Very informative.
Thank you.
Okay, nice video of you, Joe.
Hey. As an alumni of Moorhead, I'm pretty proud of it.
Okay. Yes, oh yeah, yeah. Well, according to what Department of Revenue, I trust them over what AMC is putting together. So even if we averaged it, but that's what's saying, that's 0.8.
Joe, come on up. Next item on our agenda is approval to replace building maintenance staff. Joe Olson. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Okay, Kerry Bodenheimer is leaving at the end of October. He's working on his 29th year, so it's a pretty decent run he had. So because of that retirement, I'm requesting to fill a full-time building maintenance position, which will be vacant due to his retirement. So this position will start at grade 11, step 1 on the salary grid, and it's budgeted in the building maintenance.
I'd move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Joe,
Pretty
if I
easy
may,
on you, Joe.
Front of the building really looks great. I know there are a few things that have to be correct a little bit, and you're working on that, but you
Yep.
did a nice job.
Yep, yeah, that front of the building is kind of whitened up a little bit, so it looks good, so.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Joe.
You bet.
Julie, come on up. Approval for temporary replacement of corrections officer. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. We have a corrections officer who's been called to active duty, and he has given us paperwork that's saying he'll be gone for a full year. I'm requesting that we replace him with a temporary full-time position. Since the jail tends to have vacancies, what I'd like to do is if we can get approval for this temporary position, once I do have a permanent one, I'd assign that person a permanent position, then I'd come back for a temporary until we get him back on board.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Thank you.
Julie.
Good day.
Yeah. Julie, thank you for your presentation last week when the legislative tour came in. I appreciate your time.
Nice job.
Veteran Service Officer Kurt. Good morning, Kurt.
How are you?
Well, your first time in front of us, we're going to be as tough on you as we can. So,
Yes, thank God it's about this and nothing else. So, it's pretty easy. But presenting to you today, the operational enhancement grant given by the state of Minnesota, portioned out for Clay County is $12,500. I don't know if the previous person before me has presented, but it's usually an annual money that helps us with. For next year would be our national conference in Myrtle Beach and our spring conference. So a good portion of 12.5, about $9,000 is $9,000 is going out for training and accreditation. So that would be an enhancement grant followed by a Clay County resolution that said I'll maintain the proper use of the money and count receipts, and which needs to be tracked.
I'd move approval of resolution 2015-36.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this a grant that we apply for annually?
Yes.
And it's funded through the state?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we're a little late because it was due in June or July, so, but
Alright.
they've given me time since I
Okay.
just came on.
Okay.
Great.
And my second motion for your consideration is the...
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, well,
we need a vote.
yeah, we need to vote on that first motion. So, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, Kurt.
Second motion for your consideration is the out-of-state travel for May 14th through the 21st is the conference, so I'm assuming 13th through the 22nd. I have not booked anything yet, considering the outcome of this meeting. So,
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thanks, Kurt.
thanks for your time.
We had the, as long as you're here, we had the second annual Veterans, Clay County Veterans Conference last Friday, and I thought it went very well, so.
Yes, a lot of resources under one roof, and it was amazing.
Agreed.
I saw it for the first time, so I think a little bit of this enhancement grant will go to advertising. I think we did enough, but we did a lot, but it's typical outreach that hopefully we can get more people.
You know, it's unfortunate that there weren't more people there to see
Yeah.
that great program you guys had.
Yeah.
A lot of resource out there, a lot of...
You hardly find that, plus the claims were there to do claims.
You have a lot of vendors there that weren't there last year.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just a good program.
It's a good thing, and it's growing, and I introduced Kurt as our new Veteran Service Officer, and he emceed it and did a great job, so thanks, Kurt.
Yeah,
That's good.
we even had a young lady from the Army Wounded Warriors that just was visiting but asked for time to speak. So I fit her in, and great program. We just need to get a better outcome of people, but it'll come in
It'll get
time.
better. It will.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Dave, come on up. Morning, Dave.
Morning, Dave. Good morning.
First item is approval to fill motor grader position.
Yeah, we had one of our employees chose a different option, I guess, for employment, so he turned his 2 weeks in, and we would like to go through the process again of, we advertise internally for 5 days as per the union contract. So we've currently actually got 2 spots open. We've got one down in Barnesville, and then we'd have one in Moorhead. And it sounds like, well, I guess I know we've got 3 internal candidates that have applied, so we should be able to backfill both of them. And more than likely, we would then need to advertise for a truck driver position. So it'd be nice to kind of get those wrapped up before it gets too far into the winter season.
Is there any sort of cost savings that you anticipate?
Yeah, Darren did a little calculation for us, and it looks like about $3,300. The employee that's leaving wasn't here real long-term, so we don't see near as much as like when the motor grader guy left out of Rolog, he was here for 31 years, I think it was. So there was a considerable savings on salary there, but not quite as much on this one.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. Thanks, Dave.
Second item would be a little amendment to our 5-year road plan. We've been talking at our highway committee as well as some of the other public meetings we've had. I know Jenny's attended some, Frank has also been there. There's a couple projects that have generated a lot of concern internally and externally. I think, Kevin and I had talked quite a bit about our Wall Street sees over 5,000 cars a day. It's getting kind of rough. And it's been our plan anyway to try to join with the Watersheds project up there. They're still doing a Phase 4 dike project. They did get recent approval, state grant for that, and they got grading and paving. So our idea was if we could join our paving like a mill and overlay with theirs, have a little larger scale project and hopefully see a better price. If we just do it on our own, we don't feel we'd see quite as good a prices. So that's one project that we'd like to add to our 5-year plan that's currently not on there, would be a mill and overlay on County Road 22. That would be done with local funds. We do have maintenance dollars that we feel we have worked a little efficiently this year. We have done a lot of kind of low-cost repairs rather than regular overlaying with our maintenance forces. We've been doing a lot of spray patching and crack filling, thus freeing up a little bit of dollars, which is going to work out real good for this overlay. Probably in the nature of $350,000 to $400,000 for this overlay. The other project, I guess, that was competing, I guess, was County Road 6, and we were trying to figure out how we could finance both projects. In County Road 6, we feel we do have just a little bit of state aid funds, and obviously it's a state aid highway, so those funds are eligible. We would like to use state aid funds then to do small grading. I think it's about 2,000 feet or so, just a hair over 2,000 feet. It's on County Road 6, just east of Trunk Highway 32. It's on one of the main pit roads, I guess, in Clay County. And there's a spot that's kind of soft. There's some slough areas on both sides. And I think it had issues from the very get-go when they built this thing in the mid-'80s. So we would like to remove several feet of unsuitable material, put down fabric, gravel, and then we would grade it in 2016 and then pave it in 2017. So we will put a base 1 chemical on the gravel plus treat it with chloride possibly twice a year so that it holds up in place, and it'll be a solid section. It'll actually look like asphalt when it's done because that chloride will hold the dust down, and so I don't expect any issues with it. I mentioned it to a couple of different township officials just to see if they had any concerns with a 2-year project like that, and they did not. So, and like I said, that project is about in the same nature, probably maybe $250,000 to grade and maybe a couple $100,000 to pave it. So it might be a little bit more, but we would use state aid dollars on that. And I think we have a little bit of cushion there, I guess. We haven't spent all our state aid funds on a given year. We don't have enough to do a large project. With our bonding project, we had that thing narrowed in pretty good. And then every year we do see a little increase in our allotments, and we don't show that on our 5-year plan because we don't really know. We just forecast the current year and run that out for 5 years, so we should be able to squeeze this project in.
Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, this has been discussed through our highway tracking committee, and we certainly were in full support, especially when we were able to get both those projects in. I know both of them have their issues and from a timing standpoint. So,
Jenny, you had something?
I just have a couple comments. One, I really appreciate the highway tracking committee being flexible. We did have a lot of citizens come forward on that 6 project, and it was a safety issue, and I think it'll be a much better road after the 2-year process. My other comment is a question. The wheelage tax is the 320. The current year, is that the 2014 value? I know you said you'd just taken and forecasted 5 years. Has that gone up in the last couple of years, or is that a pretty standard?
That number is probably a little conservative as well. Remember, that's our 70% share of our village tax funds. And you're correct, that number, the initial forecast from the state was, I think, $468,000. We've actually taken in a little bit more than that, so you're right, that probably number should be updated, and we'll take a look at that this spring and make sure we adjust that as low, because I know the share that we give to the small cities, whatever number we told them, I think it was 5,000, 10,000, and then Moorhead was 70,000. Those numbers have went up a little bit too.
Right. Because get all of that increase.
I appreciate the figure being conservative, but especially as I know we have a lot of projects that are valid projects that need to be fit in. Since we did have a little extra money to put forward on these 2 projects, if we could just keep it as close to.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I think, and I think I think we're purposely cautious with the dollars that we anticipate coming in. Equally important is we also have to be cautious about our estimates of our projects, because they can also go the other way.
Yeah.
So, but the nice thing about a 5-year plan is as that 5-year plan is moving forward, you can adjust it as things become actual.
Correct.
And that's kind of what we're seeing here and why this is being allowed to happen just quickly. So, but those are good comments.
Okay, what are the board's wishes?
I'll move to approve the amended 5-year plan.
A second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion
So,
carries.
so
Thanks,
Dave, are you going to coordinate with Bruce Albright and those working on the?
Yeah, and we have. Yeah, in fact, we've got our plan back and forth to Alteg a couple different times. They've been doing the plans for the watershed, so they're pretty much ready to be joined in at this time.
Keep in mind that also gives us a new lengthy construction of our County Road 1, which is now being paid for with the flood mitigation dollars. So,
yeah, they're going to completely regrade County Road 1 from the bridge up to Wall Street, as that was used for a haul road back in 09 and 2010. And then from Wall Street up to County Road 93, that's when they're going to get the realignment, which will act as the new dike. And Kevin's familiar with it, but yeah, absolutely brand new road for probably almost a mile or so.
It's going to change that look of that four-way stop.
Yeah, yep, quite a bit. But
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. We're meeting today?
Yeah, right after.
Okay, City of Moorhead request to purchase tax forfeited property. Wanda and Amy. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm Amy Thorpe from the City of Moorhead, and this is Wanda Wagner, our Finance Director. We are here today to ask for a resolution for the passage of the tax forfeit property from the state of Minnesota through the Clay County Auditor's Office. And the purpose for purchasing this forfeited property is to stabilize the market and secure repayment for the city's debt service. Recently, staff met with members of Clay County. Both jurisdictions met and discussed the acquisition of the tax forfeit lots. And they agreed that the goals of the county and the city are similar in that what's best is to resell the properties as quickly as possible and return the properties to the tax roll. And you can see in the report included in the financial considerations, Wanda has taken actions to reconcile what the financial accounts were, and as you can see in the 2013 and 2014 years that we've been doing the same process, we've basically broken even as far as the amount that's come back to the city and the amount that's went out and paid for the special assessments. Wanda, do you have anything to add?
No, that's primarily it. And actually, I went back to the original 2012 when we first started getting tax forfeit lots back. There were delinquent and uncertified special assessments against these properties of about $11 million. And we have recouped about $6 million of that to date. There are a couple of items, a couple of areas where we have not yet reassessed the projects, because it would be the new stone mill, the rest of the stone mill area. And then there's also an anticipated RFP for the final lots in Johnson Farms this fall. So that would really take care of pretty much all of the tax forfeit lots that the city has acquired to date.
Thank you. Questions for these ladies?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment. We were involved in discussion about this a few weeks back, and my concern was under what legal authority is the city asking to repurchase or to purchase the properties. And after speaking with Mr. Shockley, the attorney for the city, and others involved on both sides, the consensus was that these were blighted properties, and this commission has dealt with blighted properties before in the process by which public entities can come in and purchase those properties. So just to be clear, we are doing this under the theory of blighted property, and governmental entity has the right to come ask the board to purchase the properties that are blighted for fair market value. So I see there's a draft resolution attached. I have a resolution that I would like to submit to the board that clarifies the legal means by which the city wishes to purchase these, just so everything's clear. The draft resolution talks about economic development, and while certainly that is Moorhead's grand plan with these properties, the legal theory by which they can purchase them back from tax forfeit is under a blighted property theory. So we've seen that. We saw that with Barnesville, EDA most recently, and also City of Glendon. So it would be the same concept.
Thank you, Wayne.
Go ahead. Jenny had a question.
Is there any infrastructure needs that the city needs to do to get these lots ready to be built on, or are these ready to go?
The majority of the lots, our infrastructure is already in place. And in this case, in all 17 lots, that is the case. So the infrastructure has already been paid for by the city, obviously, with our bonding, and it's ready to sell.
And as quickly as I see lots being built on in South Moorhead, my guess is that if these were to be transferred to you, you would have no problem selling them quickly.
I'm already receiving calls.
Wayne?
I'd like to move the resolution as Jenny has in front of us.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Can we see that resolution? How does that change?
Is that the one that's here? Or?
It is not the one that's here. I didn't bring it. It just references the statute for blighted property.
It's the same other than referencing that.
It's my draft. This, I believe, was Mr. Shockley's draft that they included with the packet. So the city of Moorhead is aware of the wording? It was communicated with Attorney Shockley.
It doesn't change the outcome of.
It doesn't change the outcome at all. It just provides the legal authority for the board's action, which I think is important.
Kevin?
Thank you. Jenny, I just want to make sure that because if we're changing this to the blighted property versus what the city had in their resolution, which they probably could have included as well, but is there evidence to show that it truly is blighted property?
That would be the decision for this board to make.
But I don't see nothing's been given here, so.
Right.
I mean, I don't, we're making a resolution about it being blighted property, but if that's the case, I see there's just no evidence here for us to act on. That's the concern that I have. I support what the city wants to do, but if we're following law and what we have to do, if we're going to be making a resolution based on blighted property, there should be some form of evidence brought to us that it truly is blighted property.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
So I don't know where we should go with it here. I don't know.
Is this something that can wait a week or two?
I think I would prefer it to wait a week so that we can bring back what you need to see.
Yeah, I apologize, but I just want to make sure that if we're doing this, we have the evidence to support the resolution.
Yeah, I know we met
myself, Mr. Berg, Auditor Treasurer Johnson, and Assessor Gunderson, we met with city officials. It's been about 2 weeks now, and they had many reasons why they believe the property is to be blighted. But I don't disagree that that should be presented to the board.
We should have it as part of a record, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Okay, so we had a motion, but we had no second, so.
The city seems to think it's blighted, and it follows all the rules and regulations that Jenny has brought in front of us, so.
Mr. Chairman, no place in the resolution that the city provided did it talk about for the purpose of blighted property.
No, it doesn't there, but it does.
But there's been no evidence.
I think it's wise just to provide us with some documentation, so what we do is.
If it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I would move we table this until next week.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, you can't table something
Okay,
because there's nothing on the table. If there's no second, it's over and done with.
I thought there was a second.
No, there was no second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, we have no second, and so if you ladies will bring us back that information, we will get it taken care of.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, closed session. In a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, our next item, experience with provider of behavioral sciences, Mark and Sherry Weston.
Services.
Services, I mean.
Calling it?
Good morning.
Hi there. Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Mark Weston. Just a little background, I guess, just so that you know that hopefully where I'm coming from. Lifelong educator. I've been a superintendent in schools in many districts throughout the states of North Dakota, Minnesota. Did serve in Moorhead here as assistant superintendent of business services for 7 years. And the reason I'm here today, I guess, is of a concern that I have. We had a couple of rental properties, group homes, corporate group homes with Solutions Behavioral Health Care here in Moorhead. I've got a letter I want to read, and I can leave all this with you if you want it or not. This came from Leonard Floberg, who also rented to them, and it just states, Dear Mark, I don't have my readers on, so I'll have to hold it out here. As you know, I rented a South Moorhead home to Solution Behavioral Health Care. When they left, the condition of the home was much less than normal wear and tear. They had put up makeshift walls around the dining area that had to be removed, requiring wall and ceiling repairs. The flooring in that area was unusable. The entire house was filthy, walls, floors, cupboards, bathrooms, etc. They made no attempt to clean anything as was required by their lease. They also made no repairs to anything, doors, walls, cupboards, as was required by their lease. I can't imagine their clients, mentally disabled children, having to live in those conditions. It was a very bad experience all around, and he signed it Leonard Floberg. I'm here because we had the same experience. We did end up going to small claims court, finished testimony this past week. I'm not sure, we're comfortable with whatever decision the judge makes, but I guess I'm here a couple of reasons. I contacted Mr. Berg on a couple of occasions, and I told my wife if I don't show up today, because it's difficult to come, and they have a difficult position. I mean, again, I've been in education, I understand it. I mean, you've got children, and yet the cleanliness, and we have some pictures, but they really don't do justice, and I'm more than willing to leave them. But the damage done to these two homes and the filth, and that bothered my wife. I guess the damage, physical damage, probably concerned me the most. It was the filth that bothered my wife the most. But when we took out pizza pans that were just, I mean, they'd been scraped to try and cook on. Underneath, and again, the refrigerators, and we used Regals here, just the comments they made. So that's just one thing, and I know it's difficult, but again, the cleanliness is an issue. The flooring had been removed in the basement of these new twin homes. They were built in '06.
So it was tough to talk about the condition of the carpet. It just wasn't there. The tack strips were pulled up. They'd painted the floor. There were mattresses on the floor when I went in to look at the property. So again, there's a concern there, especially knowing that they are inspected. I think, the city does an inspection, and I believe the state through the county does an inspection. So I'm not here to criticize anyone, and but I would think that we could do a better job cleaning. I know that they have supervision, so whether it's the students themselves or children or the supervisors, I would just think somebody could run a vacuum cleaner or a mop, whatever might be the case. The other thing I have to comment on is the lack of professionalism with Solutions. Their notice to me came certified mail. I have a letter here from Mr. Bach and Joe Bach, and I used this in our proceedings we had last week. I mean, he signs off in his letter saying, please contact me if you have any questions. Now, this was dated April 29th. Their attorney, I represented myself, they had an attorney represent them. During the questioning, that they commented that I had contacted county commissioners, and you're here, and I don't think there's one of you that can testify that I contacted you, because I didn't. And then I tried to harass them, and I called Jill Scarvold, and again, I testified earlier on Monday that yes, I had contacted Mr. Berg, and I'd contacted Jill Scarvold, and then under oath, and I thanked Mr. Bakken, he told the truth. I said, Mr. Bakken, when I received your notice, and I've got your letter here stating please call, I contacted him, and he acknowledged at least 5 or 6 times I tried to meet with him. He never once returned a phone call. Not once. My daughters go to Harvey Ames, which isn't too far from their office. We stopped in. He acknowledged he could remember at least one time where staff told him I'd stopped in. Well, it was more than once. So it's professionalism. I mean, and that bothers me. Again, I've worked in the public sector in tough positions. People aren't always happy. But we have to be men and women of integrity, and we have to respond, even in difficult situations. That never happened. In fact, their checkout, and I still have it on my cell phone, came at 6:50 p.m. on Sunday, May 31st. Mr. Weston, your keys are on the counter. Here's the key code to get in. Thank you. Well, that's not a checkout. We had probably over 50 holes in each twin home. We have 2, 1300 and 1302. There wasn't a closet door left in the place. There was filth everywhere, from plumbing to electrical. The plastic they put on their windows with the alarms, if somebody tried to get out, were still there. They were supposed to be removed. We sent them a bill. It's been a miserable experience, and I don't think it should be that way. And I think someone needs to communicate that to them. I know it's tough to find providers. I know they have a tough job, but communication and professionalism, I think, are a component if you're going to be in the industry. I have rented to Habilitative Services Incorporated here in Moorhead, another provider. No issues. So that's all. If I can answer, I'm not here to, I know it's tough, but again, our experience was very negative, much like, and if you want these things, I can leave them if you don't. But that's all I'm here to say.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Weston? Rhonda, is this something your department has anything to do with?
Right, we are involved in the licensing piece and then some of the placement pieces. I actually brought our licensor, David Hallman, and my supervisor, Holly Warner, who works with the placement, who can kind of answer some specific questions about what our role is.
Mark, can I see your photos, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Rhonda, my question is, why is this coming before the county board?
Mr. Chair, I can respond to that.
Yeah.
I had, Mr. Weston had communicated to me a few times. I contacted Rhonda. Rhonda had contacted the parties. We thought they had made some movement towards a settlement, and then that was 4 or 5 months ago. And then he contacted me again here and just wasn't getting the satisfaction. And we really, I guess, felt in discussing with Rhonda that this was probably something that needed to be settled between the two parties. And Mr. Weston just wanted to come to the board to share his thoughts as he has done today and let you guys know the frustration that he is going through. And of course, a member of the public can certainly come in and address the board, and we said Yeah, we can't certainly deny that, so.
Mr. Chairman, as a renter of a facility that we are involved with as a Solutions we must contract with Solutions, correct, as a county agency?
Correct. Well, we can talk a little bit about the licensing piece, and they actually have a contract with the state for the home and community-based services that we're talking about here. Used to be with the county that moved to the state, let's see, 2 years?
January 1st, 2014.
Okay, so, yeah. So now that contract is with the State Department of Human Services.
Go ahead.
Do you want to talk about the licensing process, Dave?
We relicense them every 2 years. We check them every time we get a complaint or anything else. There's a limited amount I can tell due to the fact of what information I can release on licensing. There were no correction orders at either of those homes. One of the homes had nobody in it since December 2014. So nobody's been there in the last 5 months prior to the checkout. So I don't know what they were doing there. But every time I've gone in, they've met minimum qualifications. It is a tough site. They deal with highly behavioral, normally adolescents. They punch a lot of holes in the walls. They tear a lot of doors off, closet doors. Many times they have things in their plans to show that we no longer can have closet doors because it's required by statute to have a place to put your clothes, but you can't do it because they're tearing them off the hinges. And so they do look a lot worse than most other sites due to the fact of who we're dealing with. When I go into a site, if I see a hole in the wall, normally a place like that would try to repair them every 2 to 3 weeks. If not, they'd be out with the spackle every day. And that's the type of clients they deal with. There are, for any corporation, we have 14 corporations operating group homes in Clay County, and they would be the one with the most behavioral clients.
I think it's unfortunate, and I think the Westons definitely understand the type of clientele that are renting these properties. I think they'd be very misinformed if they didn't expect that coming into it. But my biggest issue is we need to be having agencies that are sticking to the stipulations of their contracts, and if they take closet doors off because of behavior issues, that's fine, but I've seen those photos and they in no way checked out that property in a way that is acceptable. So I appreciate you coming to the board to let us know. I say a lot that as commissioners we don't always hear we can't just automatically know what's going on unless we hear from the citizens. So I understand that it's difficult to come before this board, but I appreciate your time.
I guess the question is, what can we do about this to see that it doesn't happen? Is there something that that we report to the state about this type of situation? Or is there anything we can do about it, I guess is the question.
We would ask for anyone that walks into this home, if there are concerns about abuse or neglect of a child or a vulnerable adult, we would encourage that person to make a report, and then that process could be followed. That might then bring Dave out to the home or someone else to check on the situation.
But what if there's the abuse of the property? Mm-hmm. What recourses are there for the abuse of property?
Responsible for
Yeah, I mean, is it something that the landlord just has to accept? I don't understand that.
Well, if I could speak to that, I guess that was one of our concerns, and I do commercial real estate as well, and I did bring a copy of the lease. The lease, again, Mr. Bakken, obviously was aware of the lease. He signed it. It's 2 pages. It's not a complex lease. Anyone in this room would be able to read it and understand it. Repairs and maintenance, just any physical damage done by the leasee shall be repaired at the sole expense of the leasee. Very, very clear. On the second page, again, it's only a 2-page lease. Third page is signatures. Specific repairs and maintenance. It gets into anything they change out for the needs of their clients. Again, there was the keypads on the outside to get in. There was alarm systems. None of that was fixed or repaired. Obviously, the damage was done by their people. And that's what was so discerning to us. And I think at the end of the day, you know, they're going to split the baby, I think, here is what's going to happen. They're going to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Weston, you know, carpet would wear out in 8, 9 years. You know, we get that. Although I think if you vacuum it and you clean it on occasion, especially in closets and bedrooms, it'll last that long and longer. So it was those kinds of things. But it was very spelled out. But they don't even meet with you. They ignore you. They force you. I had to spend $900 on Greg Thompson, an attorney, that I don't think I'll get reimbursed on it. So it was that whole experience, and that's why I did try and get Mr. Berg to come in, and then Jill Scarvold, who I worked with, who was the special ed director, who works directly with Solutions. And you know, I tried to mediate, but the way they treated you, and I'll be honest, as we went through the court proceedings, that probably what upset my wife and I the most, because you folks, I mean, that's always difficult, even for any of us, and I acknowledge that. Who wants to get caught up in that? I mean, can't you two go into a room and figure it out? And I felt we could, but they wouldn't meet with you. They wouldn't talk with you. And then they got an attorney who started saying, you know, well, did you really pay these people, or did your daughters really work? I mean, the amount of time this required of me was incredible. In fact, I got to be honest, it angered me. And I'll just tell you a quick story. A gentleman from Steenerson's, because I tried to get quotes, because Greg told me I better have them. But you know, in the end, what really changed it for me, as unfortunate as it was, we know the family in town here that lost their 2 sons in a car accident from Park Christian. The gentleman from Steenerson's, as I was standing there at night, and he said, it isn't that bad. He asked me if I knew the family. And I said, no, I don't. And he says, well, they live over there. He said, yeah, that was their only 2 children. And my 2 daughters are in painting. So that just put it all in, you know, I thought, you know what? It's holes in the wall. So I walked away from it. But when we went to court and the accusations and how they're trying to paint my wife and I as if we're wealthy, we don't care about people, you were paid lots of rent, you had appreciation in the property. Well, none of that's spelled out. Why are we even talking about that? You know, I'm not going to hang my, yeah, we have rental properties. Is that, but can we not honor the lease? Was the damage not there? The filth, I mean, my daughters still talk about it. They wore rubber gloves. I mean, it was filthy. You probably have me checked out for having my daughters clean some of the stuff that was in the bathrooms. That was what was discerning to me, is the way they, just the lack of professionalism. That's what I'm here about, and that has to be discussed with them. And I'm not saying, I don't care what you do. I've come, I was even wondering if I should show up here, because, you know,
well, I think the risk for a place that does business like that is that they'll have a hard time finding anybody to rent to them.
Well, they've moved to the next one, and I don't know. But after then, that's when I found out, when Leonard wrote this, and then we've had the same experience, and maybe some people eat it. Well, Leonard did. A lot of people just don't want to go through. They don't want to be here, and they don't want to go to court. So you know what? I'll eat my 5 or 8 or 10,000 and forget it. But that it's such a negative thing, and I don't believe in it. I think people need to stand up. Again, I'm not angry. It's just something, if you would communicate to them or look at the leases, sign off on the leases, acknowledge, because nobody would take the risk, the amount of, because if it's, you know, Katie barred the door, I mean, whether it's $30,000, $40,000, nobody would get into this. You just wouldn't. It wouldn't be worth it. There's other investments.
Kevin, you had something?
Yeah, so the lease was between yourselves as a landlord and with Solutions.
Yeah, we're the landlord.
And the concerning part to me is that we do go through the permitting process. They have to go through the county for the permitting process. And also, are they then listed as an approved provider in our provider list through that we do annually?
They are, yes. I mean, they're one of our.
So that does reflect on us as a county. And I don't want to get into too much. I think you've gone through your small claims court issues for the damages. I think that was probably the appropriate way to go with it. But I do believe that if this is happening and there's a lack of response on the part of this agency, who basically has the permission to operate under the auspices of the state, which we are an arm of the state, that they should be really watching more closely of what's going on. I don't blame our staff. You're going there at the appropriate time to do the permits as you required to. But the day-to-day and the punching holes every day and all those things, that's just kind of wild that they're not even acknowledging any wrongdoing.
We don't get involved. I mean, I go into license, if it's not owned by whoever is getting licensed, then I get their permission to fire inspect it and that, but we don't get involved in any of that particular leasing. When a site moves, normally what happens is the lease is up, they go over and get a new fire inspection, they move to another place, and that's their business. While they're there, the state is normally paying some type of stipend for room and board, but we never do get involved in any of the leases or anything else.
But in order for that to happen, in order for them to get that stipend, there still has to be that process, I believe, that they have to be listed as a provider services to the
Well,
county.
they become licensed, you know, Dave does the work of the Department of Human Services and then presents that to the state, and they actually issue the license. The other piece is that should we get concerns about the safety of the residents in the home, whether it be a child site or adult site, if those reports are indicated to the agency, we assess those reports to see if there's concerns for licensing. So although Dave does the 2-year renewal, he is out at sites at other times if there's concerns. And then for the children that are placed in the sites, they all have case managers, county case managers. So if it involves that child, the county case managers are informed as well and are out at the sites. As Dave indicated, this is a provider that has tended to take some very, very challenging placements, some that other providers choose not to. And for the very reason we're talking about, there's that risk of those sites. And I don't know, we're not involved in the lease agreement. I don't know if there's communication between our providers and the landlords about the behaviors that might be present in the leasing situation. That maybe would be helpful, so maybe there's a feeling of understanding about what the risk is. I have communicated, when Mr. Weston contacted Brian, I did communicate with Joel to get a better understanding of what was going on. We talked at the office about what our role has been. You know, I get additional information. Again, we wanted to assure that we've responded to what we needed to do and reports that we've received. You know, I feel like that we've responded to the information that we've had. This is a challenge. It's a challenge for our system. We hear often about difficulty finding placements for kids who have very, very challenging behavior. This is part of the reason why.
But then maybe there should be the appropriate funding in place to cover damages.
Yeah, they still have to be accountable for, you know, if they're leasing somebody's property, then, you know, I think it's admirable they want to take those clients, but then by the same token, they have to be a responsible provider and
that's the issue.
Yeah, and deal with that, you know, accordingly. And, you know, I don't know if, you know, there's, you know, how, we'll have to see what we can do to.
I think that is the key. I mean, you've touched on it right there. That really is the bottom line. There was a lease signed. It was very clear, very easy to understand. They signed it. My wife and I signed it. I mean, again, I don't think, and then just but that lack of communication then too, the professionalism. I mean, that's the other piece. And then of course, and again, they're in court trying to build a case, so it gets kind of ugly from that perspective. But those two other issues are exactly right.
You signed a lease for 2 years or something like that?
No, it was a 3-year lease originally in 06.
During that time, are you allowed access to the property?
You know, I didn't go in as often as I should have. You know, probably the first couple of years I was there a little bit more often, but then later, a lot of times I would just go to the front door. I wouldn't go, you know, I would meet somebody because they were usually, you know, locked up or whatever, so somebody, they had a small office in the one unit where we would have to put up our certificate, our rental certificate. But I'll be, you know, to be honest, if there was something, and again, you know, I was under the impression that it's inspected by the city, it's inspected by the, and Joel told me in the last 2 years they brought in an older clientele. In fact, he told me that they struggled with them, there was libelous kind of situations, and that these kids would probably be going to jail. And that was his candid comments to me. So they kind of changed, and he told me a lot of the damage was done in the last couple of years, in his opinion. So I don't know if that's true or not.
Ryan?
Yeah, Grant, and Mr. Chairman, in working with Rhonda, we were we were unsure what our role could be, and we tried to bring the parties together, and I think he did make contact. I think maybe that's what he was referencing in their small claims, the harassment by the commissioners. Well, it wasn't the commissioners you contacted. We did try to influence a mediation with them, but we felt that we couldn't be overhanded either from a government standpoint when it wasn't our role. So
no, the reality is, as you work with them, and the relationship was closer. Now it sounds like maybe January has changed, but the reality, if you're using them, and there's Leonard Flobergs and Mark and Sherry Westons out there, you folks need to realize if you're the ones, and maybe you're not anymore, but even if it's the state, for me. Again, leases are signed, and again, if they're not being funded appropriately, well, then they need to go make the case in front of the legislature. I mean, that would be the protocol, and I never brought it up because I didn't think it was appropriate, but they were wondering how much, and they brought in the listing agreements and showing how much money we made, and I thought, well, how much do you make? I mean, you're a nonprofit. I tried to go to their board, their attorney wouldn't allow me, which I thought is unusual, but that might be the rules. But if you're getting state funds, and you have a board, and you're a nonprofit, you mean I can't come and meet with you? And they said no, they wouldn't allow us to come and meet with them. So that was shut down. We got shut down for about 35 days. That's when I reached out to Jill Scarbolt and to Brian. And based, I think, on their conversations, Joel met with me. We walked through, and I testified to this. I'll say that here. When we got done, because when he started out, and again, everything was busted from mailboxes to doorbells. In fact, there was one door that had the F word at least 40 times written on it. And you haven't seen half. I mean, there were light fixtures busted off, then they put in a canned light, and then they put plexiglass. Again, these are violent, or, I don't know, they're troubled youth. And again, they can bring in basically, I suppose, within reason, as long as you repair it. But why fight us tooth and nail? Don't even talk to us. Same thing with Mr. Floberg. They drop the keys and they leave. This isn't right. And to say, well, we're not, somebody ultimately has to be using these people. They've got a tough job, and I agree, you'd be repairing walls. I mean, these kids are tearing out screens. It's a mess. But again, you're in the business. You signed the lease. That's all I care about. And at the very least, could you not talk to us? Have we done something wrong? I mean, you've been there for 8.5 years. I wasn't even aware they moved out, to be perfectly honest, and that's fine. I mean, if you're paying the rent, that's, I guess, the best tenant. It doesn't matter to me, but they just didn't follow it, and just their lack of professionalism, and then the way they attacked us, it was offensive.
Can they be charged for vandalism?
Here's the problem. I contacted even my insurance carrier because they were in there for 8 years, and I have to take the responsibility. You should have turned it in right away, Mark. Well, I didn't see it. So they're saying, well, we weren't the carrier, and when did it happen? And our insurance only counts for 1 year, so when did the vandalism occur? And you know what? I'm okay with it. I mean, honestly, we want to put it behind us. So whatever the judge determines, we'll find that out probably this week or next, whenever. But like I say, I just want to come and make you aware of it. If you can have some influence, just with them, to be more upfront, honor the lease, change the lease. I mean, be upfront with your landlords and say, you know what, the kids we're bringing in, and we might change. They might be older, they might be younger. They're going to be tough. They're going to really wreck the place. Be upfront, and that's what I would say. And then communicate. And I appreciate Mr. Berg did help with that, and so did Ms. Scarbolt. I mean, with her phone calls, he called. I felt confident. In fact, we even met again, and then in the end, and the attorney, I don't know who influenced who over there.
So the Solutions has a board of directors, or this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So can the county, from your office, advise them of our complaints that we've had? And that I think we'll certainly have some questions about them the next time the list for approval comes around.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we certainly can, and we communicate with Mr. Gawkin frequently.
I'd appreciate that.
I think that's appropriate.
Some of the behavioral stuff, they changed what we're allowed to do to handle behavioral incidents, and they took away timeout rooms 1.5 years ago, and they did a lot of things that caused things to ramp up way higher than they used to. And I think you'll see more of that within the foster industry, because there's not a whole lot you can do now when there's a behavior. And so there's going to be a lot more damage to property. And probably damage.
This is more wisdom coming from the state then, in terms of these?
Yes, Commissioner, yes.
How many properties do they have? I mean,
I think Solutions has about 15, 16 group homes. We have 120, I believe, corporate within Clay County.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for your time, and we'll see what we can do. So. Literally, what a mess. That's an understatement, what a mess. Okay, the 2016 Arbor Park expansion, Pat.
Yep, I just got to get a couple more people up here. Yeah, come up, you guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, today I have Susan Bala and her team here, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves after I'm done. Arbor Park is in North Moorhead, and I don't know if everybody knows exactly where it is, but we have a GRH agreement with Arbor Park for the 3 buildings that they currently have. Susan and I talked a while ago, and she shared with me plans to expand their campus of what they currently have, which also means that in 2016 she'll be requesting additional GRH beds from the county. So group residential housing. Thank you. It's a state payment that helps pay for room and board for people who are in need of that payment. So anyway, I thought it would be good for Susan to share her plans with the board, so we know what's going on. So I'm going to turn it over to you when you introduce your
I will thank you, Pat. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully we'll move on to a higher note now. I do want to introduce my team. I'm very proud of them. This is Nate Brines. Nate is a registered nurse, and he came from 15 years with Sanford. He was a cardiac nurse, and then he was a case manager. And nurses who have been case managers understand a little bit about placement and all of the parties of interest that have to come together. He's also serving not only as our registered nurse, but as my assistant administrator. With us on our nursing team is Susan Hunt. Susan Hunt worked with us a few years ago and did a great job, and then she went on to Other Horizons for some strange reason, but she came back home. So we're glad to have her back, and so she's joined our nursing team again, and she's working mainly actually out in the buildings on the floor with the residents and the staff. We've also added Sarah Anderson as our office coordinator and human resources coordinator. We are finding that in our market, where we've got a core team that's been with us for a long time, there's a flux and a turnover with people that are called caregivers, and it's a tough market in Fargo-Moorhead. So we want to be building, staff development, and so Sarah's going to help us do that. So on to our project. I'm going to stand up if you don't mind. I think you'll still be able to hear me. I want to just point out what we've got in front of you. The handouts that we brought, first of all, the colored pictures. I'm going to put this behind me for just a minute. This is the facility as it exists today. We're over here in North Moorhead, 28th Street going east. And it is a 4-acre plot of land, 4.3 acres. It was the old original Romkey farmstead, so we've got some nice big mature trees in that neighborhood. We have 3 buildings there now, and we have 10 units in each building, so they're like large homes. They're all private units. We changed the name. We took it over in 2008. We took the property over. It used to be called Four Seasons. And we wanted to kind of give it a fresh start. There had been a group of partners in there who had been apartment managers and insurance brokers. And they really were not familiar with what this is all about, because this is really creating a home for somebody with care. So we kind of revamped the whole project, and we were in the Arbor Park neighborhood. And so Arbor Park was born out of that start that they gave it with Four Seasons. And we wanted to do something with parks and gardens, and we think that people do better when they're around a living thing. So we do a lot with gardening. We've got some plots out back that are waist high so that they can get to them without having to bend over. We harvest our own tomatoes and cucumbers. We've got an activities director who's also participating in property management, who's the gardener. But we've had people up to literally 100 years old gardening back there. We had a fellow that moved here from Grand Forks, and he was over 100 years old. His garden at home was 1 acre. And he planted something in every corner of Arbor Park's lot. So we kind of use that as our inspiration to do what we're going to do now. And so I've given you this handout here, which has got plot drawings, and you can keep that. Basically, I'll turn your attention to, it's about 4 pages in, which is this photograph right here, which is an aerial photograph of the land. And so this is 28th Street right here. This is 6th Avenue. This Highway 10 would be about right here. And so Walmart would be over here. So this would be north, this would be south. We have 3 buildings. This is the original 3 buildings that used to be Four Seasons, now Arbor Park. And this is the 4.3 acres that we currently have. The project was really incomplete. It's underdeveloped because with 4.3 acres and only 30 units on it, there's still a lot of growth that we can utilize. So what we'll be doing with this new development is we'll be coming to this building here. This is like an atrium entryway here. We'll come off this building here. We'll go north and then return east in an L shape. We'll put a block of offices in here, and then in the L shape will be 20 more units. On this side, we're going to actually move this garage, but we'll put another 20 units back here. And then in the middle right here, we're going to connect these 2 buildings and all of these buildings, new buildings. This will be a commercial kitchen and a large central dining room. In each building currently, there is a family-style kitchen. So it's like a home. So they eat together in family style. We cook in each building, and we'll still maintain that because there's times you want to eat in and there's times you want to eat out. And so we'll have this nice area here where we'll have the congregate dining, and of course we can use the room for many things. Use of a lot of windows in here. We want all this to open up to the backyard. This building here will have a community room off the end of it. We want to introduce a greenhouse and a community room for arts, for art therapy, music therapy. We want to create a little bit of a village concept so the people in each of these neighborhoods can go throughout the property indoors. We'll then connect these 2 buildings here, either in the front or in the back. We're still debating. But then people can actually move throughout the property and go visit their neighbors in another neighborhood. You know, we all get kind of cooped up in the wintertime here and get a little bit of cabin fever, and these folks are no different. They need to change their surroundings. They need to have some mental stimulation. So we want them to be able to move throughout the property and take advantage of that. We're going to build this out in 2 phases. The first phase will be, which we hope to actually begin next week, will be to build these first 20 units and the kitchen and dining. The commercial kitchen is still being developed with final plans, and so that's going to go to the county or to the state actually for final approval. That's the last piece. But what we'll end up with here is 10, 10, and 10. These 2 buildings will become more memory care. This building currently is memory care, which is a secured memory care unit. There's such a demand, and it's underserved, and so we will make both of these buildings memory care, so we'll be able to double our capacity for that level of memory care. We all have some memory issues, but it's on a spectrum, so we want to be able to house folks that are actually progressing and not have to discharge them to a nursing home if we can avoid it. Our levels of care go from very light duty. They might just need some medication management and meals, some socialization, and we do go all the way through end of life. We have a very, very well-defined philosophy of care, and we believe very much that this has to be a home with care and not feel like a hotel or an institution or make them feel like they're not in their own home. We think that the biggest adjustment of people's lives is to leave their life behind and come into a facility like this. It's very scary. So I think the thing that has made our families comfortable is that there's no visiting hours. This is their home. And they're actually gardening, they actually have friends, and they're actually conducting a level of life in a new chapter. So with the 40 units, we will then become a 69 bed facility. We will lose 1 room here when we connect these 2 buildings. The reason we're building it in 2 phases is because construction of Fargo-Moorhead right now is really tough and really delayed. We are fortunate in that one of our partners is a builder, so he can pull the subcontractors and pull the trigger very quickly. But we have literally waited months to get the appraisal in. And as you know, we can't really start anything without getting the appraisal in, and so it was due at the end of August. First it was due in June, then the end of August, and we still don't have it. But he has given us the numbers, and they're just going to give us the paper now. So this is all coming together here for the end of the week, and we'll be able to start digging and pull the trigger. We do want you to know that we are very excited about this project. We've been waiting a long time to get to the point where we felt the time was right and the demand was there. I think the demand is definitely there. I do want to point out a couple of features to this growth and development. One is that every one of these new apartments we're going to build in a studio style, which is more of a quasi-efficiency apartment. So if you look on, maybe you can, there is one apartment that we blew up here. It's this page right here. There it is. It's this in your handout, this one right here. There you go. The units that we have right now are good-sized rooms, and they're all private. We don't have anybody doubled up, and it's a private handicap bathroom, but it is a large room, and so their bedroom, sitting room, everything is all together in a studio. These, as you can see, are going to have a couple of features to them. One is that the handicap accessible bathroom will be large and generous, double closets because they need storage, and then a separate living area and kitchenette and separate bedroom. So they have a little bit more privacy. They have a little bit more ability to entertain their family. If they want to make a piece of toast in the morning and a cup of coffee for themselves, they can do that. They can have a little bit more of a definition to their lifestyle within their unit. We don't want them staying in their units. We want them out. We want them to participate. We don't want them isolating. But this does give them a whole lot more lifestyle in the units. So all of the new units will be of this style. If somebody started to have some faulty memory or they were having some medical problems, even temporarily, and we needed to disconnect the stove, by example, we can do that, and we can fit a countertop in there so that they're not going to harm themselves. So we've got that flexibility. We have this very well-defined level of care. We do want to let you know, in terms of demand, what we're finding. We have run, over the last 3.5 years, 98.4% occupied, which is virtually staying 100% full, which is what we are now. In 2014, at 13 and 14, we had a series of deaths with people that have been there for a while, which dropped it to about 85% occupancy, and that was the first time in 4 years that had happened. So we are really running full. We're always getting calls, and we're paying attention to the calls that we're getting. A lot of times we're finding that there's nobody serving the couple, because maybe one person in the couple has more needs than the other. And so here, if they're in one of these efficiency apartments, if mom needs more help because she's more forgetful, she's got medical needs, and dad can still get out and about, they can feel safe and comfortable that whichever spouse needs the help is going to have the help. The other thing we're finding is the memory care, which is just really underserved, I think, everywhere, and growing. And so a part of our programming is to make sure that we have enough amenities under the roof to be able to give them lifestyle and to be able to stimulate them mentally and give them some quality of life. We are going to introduce happy hour with little fake. But these are little things that they remember doing. They remember at the end of the day. Back here in this backyard, we do barbecues. This is a three-season porch back here. We maintain some of the elements of the farmstead because we've got the silo here and the tractor. But we want them to be able to garden. We want them to be able to have happy hour or pizza and beer night, even if it's not alcoholic beer. We want them to be able to have some things that make them feel like this is a real life. So this is our project. We want you to know that we are proud of our association with the county and with all of you and in the state. We view ourselves as working partners, and we want you to be well acquainted with what we're doing and feel proud that you can offer this to the community. So I'm here to answer questions.
Great, thank you. Looks like a great project.
Great job.
Kevin?
I want to comment. I have, in my time as being a commissioner, I've never heard any complaints about that facility. I've driven by it. It's always well maintained. It was 2 years ago today that I lost my mother, and part of the reason was through dementia.
Yes.
And so it was, it's nice to know that we have more opportunities. One of my questions for you is, are all of these associated with people who need assistance with funding, or is this open to?
No, it's open.
Everybody needs
we generally run about 50-50 private to public pay needs, and we're open. We don't maintain a ratio saying, well, we're only going to let 25% be public pay. It's whoever comes and needs help can come.
Well, thank goodness in my mother's case, she had a policy that allowed her to go into an assisted living facility.
Beautiful.
And that policy really covered all of her expenses to live there.
Yeah.
And these places are extremely important to every community to have, and I'm excited to.
Good, we are too. We are too. We want you to know it's all local ownership. There's 5 of us that are partners. I'm the operating partner, so it's myself and Mark Payne is the builder, Kim Alberty with Agassiz Seed in Fargo, Larry Dietz and his wife from Preference Personnel, and Jay Richards with Richards Transportation up here on Highway 10. We've been together since 2008 on this, and we are truly excited to be able to develop this to the level that we want.
And I also would have the assumption that if you're ready to go in a week, that your building permits have been in place?
Yes.
And that you meet the zoning requirements of the city?
Absolutely. All of that. In fact, we actually went before the city, and they were good enough to see that we qualified for a tax abatement to help us get started. We will be investing in the community about $5.5 million with this project and recreating more new jobs. We are also really excited because this allows us to build a company to the next level, because we think of our team and we want opportunities for them. And with 30 units, there's only so much you can do. With 69 units, we can actually build our organization and build our company so that they're a part of something, and our company is a community in and of itself with our staff. So we're really excited that we can not only add jobs, but we can build the team that we have here, because these are really dedicated, great people that we have.
On your property there now, is that the maximum you can expand what you're doing now, or is there still room?
There is still some room for growth, and we did this. We debated and debated, but we wanted to do all of this that we see in our vision right now on one floor. We think that people want to be able to get out the door easily. They don't like elevators. It's scary to them. If we did anything more and we wanted to do some more independent living, that could go up, and there's room to do that. But right now, we have a core population that we're serving, and we're not looking to vary from that. We really know that population. And I will tell you this, it's a broad spectrum. We have ages from 44 years old up to now 98 years old. And it's a community. And I came by this naturally. I have a brother who has neurological issues, and I've taken care of him for 26 years. And he taught me a lot about what the person goes through, because they're still in there, but they can't keep up in the rest of the world, and what the family goes through, and even what the county goes through, what the state goes through. You know, we are going to go back to our original name of Arbor Park Village because we believe in that. So we're a neighborhood, and so that's our next level of growth is going to be to serve this population, and we're clear about that.
Thank you, Frank.
I guess I can attest to you do run a very nice place. I used to make weekly visits there. I had some acquaintances in there, so.
Thank you.
So it's a very nice place, and it's just people that have been there seem to be happy the ones that I visited.
You know, our best ambassadors have been the families that are there, and they know that we are strong advocates. The county knows that we're advocates for people with disabilities, and I think our biggest ambassador, we don't advertise, and we're on the web. We have a website and we have a telephone number, but what we have is families that have grown to find that there's a home there and that we care, which is the most important thing that we can do. So I will share your comments, by the way, with our staff when we get back, because that's music to our ears. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say one last time, I think it's a growing need, and I'm glad that this side of the river is allowing more opportunities for assisted living.
Well, we feel a little bit competitive, you know, with North Dakota.
Sure. I know that, and because I've experienced it, and just before my mother's death, we had planned on moving her to a new one that had opened in South Moorhead.
Sure.
And at that time, we were fortunate enough to book the last spot available in that facility.
Wow.
But it also is, I think, an opportunity where I plead for people to always look at policies that can deal with the help of assisted living in the time of a crisis in one's family. Because until that happens,
you don't know.
You don't know,
You really don't.
and you don't know how expensive it is until it happens.
You know,
and the policies end up being very affordable when you look at the alternative.
And you don't realize it because, you know, in younger years, it's all going to last forever. And until it happens, you don't realize how important this is.
And like you said, it can happen to a 40-year-old as well as it can a 60 or 70.
Exactly. And they have to have find a place where they feel welcome, and that the family has care as well. the family.
Amazing.
Thank you. Good presentation. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
If you have any questions, we're always there, and I think we have everything in order, except we'll be getting to the commercial kitchen. And do stop by anytime. We're going to have a little ribbon cutting, groundbreaking with all of our residents. They're coming out. We're going to take pictures of them and do all of that. But when we have the grand opening, we'll give you a shout to come on by.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take the extra there. They can keep theirs. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Tim, consideration of Felton Prairie parcel appraisal.
I think the board is familiar with the two parcels that we own in Felton Prairie, fractional section 31 and fractional section 6, each comprising just under 260 acres apiece. We had our discussion earlier this year with the DNR. DNR is interested in considering possibly buying part of this property. We met again, Commissioner Gross and Commissioner Mojo and myself, and I can't remember who else was there, but we met with DNR again to talk about it. And when we've discussed this in the past, it's kind of been here and there as to whether the county is interested in selling that property or not. The DNR has asked us a couple of different times, they really don't know if they can acquire it until they have an appraisal done to figure out what it's worth, because as a state agency, they really can't pay more than what the appraised value is. And in order to do an appraisal, they have to have some positive response from the county that will at least consider a sale to them if they do an appraisal. And in order to do that, we have to pass a resolution saying, yeah, we'll consider a sale to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. And what that does is it gives them the green light to put an appraiser in the field and have an appraisal done, so we at least get a number from them to either say yes, no, or negotiate with. And I guess that's what I'm here. The resolution that was in your packet it pretty much lays out, what the situation is. It's been through discussion at the county. It was a subject matter in the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan. Now that plan said that this particular piece of property should be preserved or maintained, and the DNR is interested in doing an acquisition, and
this is the way to go.
It's the only way we can get a number from the Department of Natural Resources is to pass a resolution to say, yeah, we would consider it. It doesn't obligate us to anything, but at least it gives them the ability to do their appraisal.
I think it's a good step to start out with, because the fact that right now all we're getting is a lease of $1,500 a year, or over a 3-year period.
Over a 3-year period, and that's substantially better than what we were getting before.
Well, probably is, but still
No,
not
it's not.
sufficient.
It's a hay lease.
Yeah, okay. We've got a hay lease with the DNR right now on the 2 years.
Oh, it's a hay lease, okay.
Yeah, and
So
then-
there is no pilt-top opportunity then?
No, and I just
Not
think,
until they own it.
I think we need to consider
Yeah.
either doing something with the property, and I would agree with this, and I'd make a motion to move ahead with it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, that's for this resolution. We have any further discussion? We have a motion and a second.
I'll speak on it. Commissioner Gross and I did meet with the DNR, and this doesn't tie the county one way or the other, but I think it is in the county's best interest financially. A couple of reasons. Initially, I had questioned if selling to the DNR or anyone would be the best option. Because of the nature of this property, it's not a property where someone could purchase and start planting. There's some calcaneous fens there. There are some limitations that are in place to where the average person would really have to go through hoops and jumps to do anything with this property. And if we're receiving minimal payment amounts Currently, PILT payment is considerably more money that the county could get back than
And we would get that.
we would.
That was my question, okay.
If we sell to them, we would get a
Okay,
PILT.
that was my
Right.
question.
So-
PILT would come into the picture if if the DNR were to acquire the property.
But we're far better off with that.
Yeah, and I know there's some concern, that people contact me concerning the hay lease, that they were getting hay off this thing, and they're still gonna be able to get that. It may not be every year or something like that, but I think the DNR sort of indicated that they'd probably still be open to doing that hay lease. I mean, letting people hay it for...
Yeah. Part of what DNR wants to do is they want to utilize, the native seed that comes off of that property for prairie restorations in and around the area. So they would utilize it, sometimes, but yeah, there is the opportunity that they could sublease the haying part of it out to another individual.
Yeah.
There's no resources underneath there that would...
No, the study of the Felton Prairie did determine that the aggregate resources are not under that property, and during the county-owned property meeting earlier this spring, that is when we decided to go with the northern property, because there is some aggregate on the southern part of that property that we will continue to use. So it's been determined that there's no aggregate under this particular parcel.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Nancy, finally, you're up.
Hey, yeah, no kidding.
Tax forfeit property list.
I did bring some photos, because everybody likes photos.
Thanks, Tim.
No. Lovely properties that we will be inheriting. There's a list of properties in your packet. These are kind of in the order in which they're showing up. When all the dust is settled, we have 6 properties left that we will be selling at our tax forfeit sale. Did you guys get one of these?
I have it somewhere. I just have so much.
And I'm asking that you approve them for the sale.
Move to approve.
Give a moment, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to review it.
The last one on the list, there is something that would be only offered to adjacent landowners because it's a landlocked parcel.
Oh.
And
Is that the property that we've talked about?
No, that's a different one. That's the first one, I believe, isn't it? That's the top, the Baker one? Yeah, that's the top one. The first 2 pages. And we have interest in that property. The people that have the properties now can still request a repurchase up until the time of our tax forfeit sale, which is December 10th.
And there's been no indication of that so far?
Not on these ones, no.
Okay. I would call. There was no second to the, was there a motion made?
Not yet.
Was there a motion made? Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
All that waiting just took a minute.
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay, I'm watching.
You're so efficient, Nancy.
All right, good enough.
Oh, we're at committee reports. Wayne.
Thursday, September 22nd, for Clay County Collaborative and Children's Mental Health. There was a meeting among the Early Childhood Initiative of Clay, Becker, Otter Tail, and Wilkin counties, along with the White Earth Reservation, to establish a network of early childhood mental health providers. The central issue is to build partnerships throughout the area. The entities participating in this, along with the above-mentioned, include Head Start, school readiness, special education staff for the different school districts, public health, crisis services, physicians, and home service programs, among other community partners. And this meeting took place in Barnesville. It was very well attended and is a great step forward to deal with the increasing concern of children's mental health. On Thursday, October 2nd, Children's Mental Health Local Advisory Council. General business, presentation by Scott Madsen of Clay County Social Services. This was in regard to the budgeted items for all children's mental health services, and there are several, nearly $1.5 million in 2014 and in 2015. Then there were agency updates from Clay County Social Services, Clay County Public Health, Clay County Collaborative, Prairie St. John's, Lakes, and Lakeland Mental Health, and also from the Moorhead Public Schools. And those are my only two meetings, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Frank?
Last Tuesday, met with the lobbyists concerning the jail. You know, we were going over with them, had a meeting with them, and I thought that was a very good meeting, that they felt, you know, of all the funds that are available, you know, and, you know, do we get it, don't we get it, you know, we sort of get their thoughts, and I figure we got a 1 in 4 chance, something like that, you know, but I don't know. I mean, they can't predict that either, you know, but I think we made a good decision in contacting them and working for us, because they seemed very concerned about getting that stuff for us. After that, we went out to Minnesota State University Moorhead there, where we met with the Senate Bonding Committee, and they were discussed the wastewater treatment plan that we're planning, and Kirk gave a very good presentation. I really have to compliment Kirk and what he, the way he presented the information. Was a very good presentation he gave.
Solid waste facility, not waste.
Solid. There's also
waste.
But Moorhead presented a wastewater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, they present, okay.
Yeah, and we're working on the solid waste too.
Right.
So. After that, we met at the jail with the Senate Bonding Committee. Was involved in that, and it was very good presentation. Brian gave a good overlay of the thing, and Sheriff Burkhurst gave a good. I mean, they presented it well. Julie did a great tour of the place, you know, and really brought out, you know, what our problems are with the stuff. And I think there was a lot of questions asked. I feel that they really, you know, were interested in our jail thing, you know. So I think that was a very good thing that we did, brought them up here. I don't know if we brought them up or that. I'm glad they were here to see it. Wednesday, I went to Barnesville. Dale Rowley had a presentation for senior citizens on ageism and Social Security, and he had a good information on there for the people. After that, I went to the Highway Department. There was a retirement for Conrad Eklund, and there was a meeting with the Highway Department, discussed some things. We talked about different jobs, some jobs coming up and stuff. And Friday, Partnership for Health down in Barnesville again. But there was a presentation on adverse child events and family home visiting programs for childhood. You know, when do you start working with the children and stuff like that? You know, and it just they really think, you know, starting at when they're born, you know, they even start working with the mother, you know, while she's pregnant and stuff like that, working with them. So they give a good presentation on that. After that, I went to Kurt, Veteran Service Officer, has already talked about the conference held at Armory. They had a great program, but as I said before, unfortunately, weren't very many people there, you know, and I don't know whether we have to advertise that thing some more, but it's a very good presentation. Yesterday at the Perm facility, got a very good, you know, understanding what the problems are out of that incinerator, and it was a good presentation there too. That's it.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks. A couple weeks ago, I had Lakeland Mental Health in Fergus Falls. That meeting specifically was the search committee as we continue to look for an executive director, the replacement for Claire. It's moving forward. We were defining the parameters by which the minimum qualifications for that meeting. Then I also had in Fergus Lakes and Prairies Community Action joint meeting with the West Central Community Action. Because of Joe Peterson's retirement, we're continuing to mold what that collaboration looks like, and the two agencies have been able to save a considerable amount of money by combining a couple positions. there was some talk of what a possible merge between the two agencies may look like. Both the boards for each respectable agency kind of were uncomfortable with that merge term, and we'll basically see how it goes from here. Everything seems to be working very well. One major concern is if the two were to merge, one of the agencies would have to give up their Head Start grant, and so what would that look like if they did? So granted, they won't be merging at this point, but we're just discussing. I also had Lakeland Mental Health again the following week. We toured the Detroit Lakes facility, and that organization continues to serve a great deal of people, and this summer we've toured all of their different locations and all of the sites, continuing to do a really good job. So thank you to them. I also went to the bonding tours, the MSU, Kirk and staff at Moorhead. Steve, they've done a great job presenting what the projects we'd like to get done were. The reps were really responsive and asked a lot of questions, and I just really appreciate the amount of time that they take out of their lives to come to Greater Minnesota and see all of the very valid, but like I said, Clay County has really valid projects. Also, the jail legislation tour, Julie did a great job. Our staff did a great job. Just continue to advocate for the needs. I think some of the reps were surprised at the amount of North Dakota residents that are in our jail. They had a lot of questions as to how that affects our staffing, and they were happy to hear that we've taken steps to address some of the mental health needs as well. I had the JPA meeting last week. We continue to talk about the retreat coming up in December, but we discussed a little bit what the membership of that group entails, and if we want to tweak it a little bit. I feel that adding some township representation is good for that, because at first glance it appears to be a partnership with just the Moorhead Metro DGF areas, and if it joint powers of the Clay County facilities, then not facilities, but Clay County organizations, that we should have a greater Clay County voice as well. I think that was all my reports.
Here's a copy of the Veterans Conference program, if you guys want to see how many participated there. So, Kevin.
I too, that was really the only meeting that I have to report on would be the Clay County Joint Powers Committee, and I agree with Commissioner Mojo regarding the discussion of the membership. Before, we did have two townships as individual members on there, one being Moorhead Township, one being Oakport Township, and now with Oakport, the vast majority of Oakport being within the city now, and Moorhead Township has really shrunk in size because of all the annexations that have transpired, and the fact that they have not even attended any meetings in several years. I've been on that committee and they've never been there. And I talked about maybe proposing that we contact the Clay County Association of Townships and let them decide a member on their behalf that could come before our board. And I think that's what Jenny was also maybe trying to get at, that we should, and I don't know if she's thinking more than one or what, but I think that's open for us to still act on that. And I think that was met with a positive reaction. The intergovernmental retreat, we have determined that a significant issue that we do want to have on the annual agenda now is the street crimes issue. We're seeing so much of that taking place today. We're going to probably hope to have some, as a matter of fact, we're even looking at the potential of having a keynote speaker from the U.S. Attorney's Office. These are things, that part we're still working on, but maybe somebody from there could give a presentation with that big overview of what's going on, and then having a panel of of our local people who are involved with what's directly happening in the metro area. And then the other part of that we also are going to try to push for would be to have some more information on the capital projects that we're all working on. We'll probably know more about the referendums, for example, of DGF and more at schools, and it would be an appropriate time to give us, for us as a county, to give our presentation probably more so regarding our jail facility as well as our solid waste, and to a smaller scale our highway meeting or buildings and so on and so forth. But that's,
By then, we should have an idea on our bonding money too, if we get some, right?
well, that's in January, so it's,
But we should have an idea, I think, by then, if we're gonna have some success with it.
I wouldn't hold our breath on that till the last day of the legislature.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Campbell might want to, joint powers might want to consider asking somebody from the North Dakota side, Fargo side, to speak regarding the crimes unit.
That's part of the deal.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, I think the head of the crimes unit, street crimes unit, is from Fargo, and we're hoping that that person will be part of the panel. Yeah.
And Chief Todd and Chief Ebinger can both participate in that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They'd be happy to, they both.
Those are names that have been both brought up, so. And we're actually looking at the North Dakota U.S. Attorney as opposed to the Minnesota one, because the North Dakota one, I think, has more
Right there.
Yeah, more direct contact.
closely direct contract with what's happening in our metro area. And will probably be easier to get. Oh, and I did want to mention too, yesterday the meeting at Perham with our member counties, and it was a good opportunity to give an update to all the counties about the trials of and tribulations of Perham incinerator.
Okay, I attended that also in Perham, and last week I was at the flood diversions property acquisition update, and I think Brian provided everybody with a copy of the handout that they had there, which I thought was good information. I was at the Veterans Conference. Frank covered that, and yesterday I was also in Bemidji for the INC annual membership program, and that was, they had some good presentations there. They had the state demographer there, and it was very interesting, and they're supposed to email me the information, so I'll provide that to everybody once I get it. And we had a presentation on clarifying the clean power plan, which is, when you listen, there was somebody from Minnesota Power Cooperative there to explain that, and it's pretty alarming when you listen to what's going on there with the EPA and, you know, the new standards that they're going to be applying to these power companies and coal-generated electricity, and which a lot of people think is going to more than double the cost of electricity to the consumer. And the other issue was the Clean Air Act and Tribal Air Quality Initiative, which a lot of people are concerned about, and it's Indian tribes requesting that that their tribal land be reclassified as Class 1 areas rather than Class 2 in terms of the Clean Air Act, which, once that's done, if it's done, it impacts 300 kilometers surrounding the tribal land, which pretty much, they showed a map of Wisconsin and Minnesota, and it pretty much covers the entire states where any kind of economic development would be impacted by, you know, and nobody knows what the impact would be, which is the problem. So it's pretty alarming stuff that's going on. That and there was a lawyer from Wisconsin there that's dealing with that and fighting it in Wisconsin right now. So that was it for me, Brian.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of the meetings have been covered. The jail presentation, the solid waste presentation, the highway department meeting, the joint powers agreement. The did have a management team with the county department heads, meeting with Rhonda and Kathy, reference budget and the detox center. I had a meeting with a construction manager on the different types of construction management in reference to upcoming projects that we have, and I did have some conversation, a phone conversation with our architect in regards to a schedule progress to move forward, plus getting us out a RFP so that we can start looking at a construction manager sometime this year, hopefully. We had an administrative advisory meeting, reference the diversion. I attended that 7:30 special meeting last Friday, as Commissioner Whalen did as well. A couple of personnel evaluations, city department heads, Dave and Rhonda, attended a couple different solid waste things, the one at PERM, and then the presentation that was with the bonding committee. I guess I do want to remind you, I don't know if you've received an invitation, but next week after your board meeting, Lakes Country is hosting a meeting here you're invited to, and I think if you haven't received this invitation, you will. And it's just from West Central Initiative and the Lakes Country Service Cooperative. Want to talk about just a roundtable discussion in regards to family economic successes and job careers and employability and things like this. They've been doing it in several of the counties around here, so I hope you can plan on attending that. Had new hire orientation. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago with building maintenance in regards to some scheduling issues and different things. We had a meeting at the tax forfeited one. We've already gone through that. The recycling tour, I went on that as well. We met at the juvenile center with the architect again to try and refine some options there, because we need to look to the future there as well. We can't necessarily forget about them. And I think that's about it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Vicki?
No, thank you.